Hi guys. Okay, today it will be pretty simple. I will just walk you through on how to make some kind of a weather app. Now take note that this API for the weather detection is provided to me by or to us by FreeCodeCamp, and it's not very accurate. However, it is useful to actually learn about um, components, renders, or use effects in general in React. And as well, we can also learn about the navigator that is available to us by the browser API to access the geolocation of a user and the permissions API as well. Now, if you check on our app on the right, if I just convert here, yes, and also convert because this is a condition from the FreeCode camp. And if I refresh on load, it will actually fetch the weather, the country, and the city, which is not really, I think this is hidden from like FreeCode camp API, but anyway. And if I go to settings here, and I just lock the location and go back, as you can see, permission denied. And I can also reload, and there we go. And if I go ask, so we want the browser to ask us first, we will have this. Grant permission to access your location. There we go. Very nice. And if I refresh, it will still be the same. And then if I allow it, it will now show us the weather. So that means that this app here is actively listening to the permission state right here. Okay. And the code that I have is pretty messy right now, and we're actually going to fix it. So let's walk through it. So in here, excuse me, I actually just dumped all the logic in one component or one file, but we can actually separate it in here. And warning, you should not use context providers here. That's because with context providers, if one state changes, for example, if a child changes, or rather, if we have, for example, in here, this is responsible for geolocation. If this provider here listens for the changes in the permissions and also the loading, so this loading, for example, is a context, and we need to change the loading, then when the loading context provider changes, or that component, then that means this component here will also change. So I actually did it before, and it was infinite renders. Almost like that. Almost like that. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about mm, geolocation first, or navigator. So the navigator is available in the browser. So if I try to say console log here, console.log navigator, save that and actually go to the console in my on my browser. Was it saved? Oh, right. This is actually the live one. Oops. I guess we can just check here as well. Console.log navigator. Excuse me. There we go. Okay. We have the geolocation and others, and also the permissions here. Okay. So let's walk through our code on the left. So I separated the logic here, and then the component responsible for rendering the UI over here. And we're just getting all the state values from the logic above. And this is what we call a custom hook in React. And we can actually somewhat separate this. But at the same time, if we separate them, at the end of the day, they are still interconnected. And by that, I mean they're accessing the same values here, set loading right here. Okay. So let's try to fix this just a tiny bit. So first, we have the types. Okay, that's not bad. Let's move on down here. You have the state permissions here. What if we can actually separate this into a custom hook for permissions? Let's do just that. So in best practices, we should also separate this mm, in a file like this one. So let's say we want to separate it at the not context, but custom hook of use permissions.tsx. Then we just want to say const use permissions. Then what will we take here? Well, we will take the what kind of permission we want to access. There we go. Okay. Then we can just say con. This is a React. No, it's not a React component because it will not return a JSX. Yes, we can just have it like this. So we'll take the type, the name, and an object here for the type. So name is either geolocation, notifications, etc. But anyway, you can have it like this for now. Okay, and then we can copy paste this and paste it over here and auto import the use state. Oh, it's not doing. Let's import it manually here. So import state from React. There we go. And then we can just have the use effect as well, which is what we have over here, right? Yeah, this is for permissions. So let's copy all of this, paste it here, and import the use effect here. Do you also want to set loading? I guess we can have the set loading. So and also pass the set loading here because we actually want to have just one loading state. And if we instantiate a new loading state here, then we won't have access to that if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Okay. So we have set loading. This is a type of React.dispatch, React.set state action of Boolean. And where did I get this? Well, when we hover over it up here, we get this one up here, the type of dispatch. Okay. And we can actually simplify this to just say set permissions to result.state because the values for the result to state is the same as what we have with the values of our permissions. The same one here. So what this does in here is that it listens for the changes. If you noticed when we were changing the permissions from the settings, it was actually responding to the change live. So say block, there we go. Even though it says here that to apply your updated settings, we need to reload. So that's what the event listener is for in this case. So set permissions equals to result.state. Oh, and the set error as well, I guess. So set error. Now set error react.dispatch react.set state action. Then what type of error do we have? It's this right here. Okay. Alright. It should be capital S. Okay. And the name, okay, should be up here. name just to make it somewhat dynamic. Okay. Now we just want to return the name here. Okay. Now for this warning from ESLint, mm, find the parent that find the parent. What's it say? Find the parent that component defines it. So I guess we want to have a function because this is so anything that's passed on here because we don't want to actually accidentally change the reference to this function when it re-renders. Mm. Anyway, let's remove this for now. Go. And actually, I've been doing this kind of wrong for the set loading. It should be that finally. So finally, we want to set the loading to false. Okay. All right. I guess we can remove it. But I only want to run this once. Maybe we can have like if permissions. If permissions. There we go. And then we can remove this. Nice. Okay. So if the permissions still does not exist, then we can just run this below. I guess that could work, right? And let me just align it. There we go. Okay, let's export this now. Export, I guess default is permissions. Okay. Then now we can have the const permissions here. So const permissions is equals to use permissions. So we'll pass on the name is geolocation and set loading and set error. Okay, nice. All right, it should be the permissions that is returned here, not the name. Okay, there we go. What else? What else? Oh, what's this? Set error. Ah, I forgot the undefined here as well. That should fix it. Okay, nice. Oh, really? Set permissions? Were we changing that here? Set permissions. No, we weren't. So let's remove that from what's being passed on. Okay. And let's actually test this out in a development environment. So to do that, we can just say npm run dev. Okay. Now let's exit. Let's go to the settings. Because here, go to local host 5173 and check it out. Get not permission to access your location. Okay. Let's allow, I guess. Or I guess here, the settings. Okay, there we go. Allow. Nice. So it is working. Very nice, very nice. Okay. And it's not causing infinite re-renders, right? Yeah. That's good. That's very good. Let's try to block it. Okay, permission denied. Ask again. Grant permission. Okay. Allow. Okay. This is going good so far. Although I do think I should drop it inside the user. I use callback. Now let's not. since we don't actually want to save its reference. Yeah. Mm. Okay, now that we separated or abstracted this um permission logic, and we can actually use this for a lot of stuff, like all kinds of other permissions as well, and add an event listener to those stuff. And this will only run if we have no permissions for that specific instantiation, which is when we call this once. And we can also call it again, if I'm not mistaken, to um, other permissions to check. But of course, we should change the name. Oh, okay. Oh la la. I guess I should just change this to permissions instead, and then over here, change it like this. Okay. Now, what is the next thing that we can change or to abstract? Well, I guess that would be geolocation. Can we abstract the geolocation here? All right, I should actually walk you through the geolocation. So to access the geolocation from the navigator, we just do navigator, access the key of geolocation, then access its function, which is get current position. Invoke this function, and inside of this, the parameters of this function, we'll accept a callback for whether it is a success to get the position of the user or whether it fails to get the position of the user. And also options. If we hover, there we go. And in this case, we just want to set the latitude and longitude of the user's position from the geolocation state right here. So that's pretty much it. And we also want to watch for the changes of the permissions state, because we actually want to only run this if the permissions is equal to granted, or if the user has granted us permission to check their location from the geolocation API. Now, I'm not sure if we can abstract this, so I guess probably not, because it will get complicated since we also want to watch for the permissions here. And since we want to pass the permissions here, yeah, it's like it won't make sense to abstract it. Now, will it? Probably if we are doing a bigger project. I guess the only thing that makes sense to abstract right now or to separate is the permissions here, because we can definitely reuse this in a lot of stuff. But really, the only thing we needed for this, in this case, is for geolocation. Okay, let's move on. And now this use effect here is responsible for the side effect of fetching the weather API endpoint from FreeCodeCamp. And now we can actually do one more refactor here, which is that most of the time we actually don't want to expose our end API endpoint. And additionally, we actually want to reuse this somewhere along the lines. To do that, we can move it inside of an environment variable. To do that, we just declare a .env file inside the working directory of your project. So that's pretty much the root directory. So over here, where the package JSON or README lives, just have new file and say dot and then env. And now for Vite, which is a compiler or a bundler, I'm not sure what to call it, for React, you should instantiate an environment variable, excuse me, with the prefix of Vite or Vite or Vite, whatever. And then underscore the variable name that you want. It can be anything. In this case, we can say weather API equals. So either you don't provide double quotation marks, so like just a pure whatchamacallit here, or you can also provide strings just to make it more readable, I guess. So in this case, we can cut this and place it over here. Now to access that in Vite, you can just say, so this is like a dynamic, so import dot meta dot env dot, and then the name of the variable, which is Vite weather API. Now if you're not sure what this is, right here, this is a backtick to have dynamic data inside. It is also considered a string. So this is a shortcut for string concatenation. What's that? Well, by combining strings. And to have dynamic data inside of this string right here, which is the backticks, we have $sign and then curly braces. And that's pretty much it, the variable that we want to pass in. And the value of this will be equal to the value of the variable that we pass inside. And this is similar to, let's say, something like this, and then plus question mark lat equals, and then plus again, then the geolocation the latitude, and then plus again, stuff like that. Okay. And yeah, that's a simple fetch. Since a fetch is a promise, we can say that then, and this finally should actually be outside. Let's fix this. Yeah, that's it. There we go. It's still working. I think this is the amount that I can abstract this. Oh no, there's one more thing. So we're just passing on the values here so we can access it inside the component that will render the UI. And in here, yeah, this is the one that we can actually abstract. So let's do it. So let's do just that. So let's have a lib folder here. So lib pretty much means a library of files, I guess, or modules wherein reusable code can live. Oh, no pun intended. Anyway, can declare the utils.ts, and this is where the convert temp or convert temperature will live, I guess. And we'll also have it should be called temperature type, but I guess we can also call it weather temperature, and we can have Celsius or Fahrenheit. There we go. And export that, export convert temp. Okay. All right. And then over here, we can just have it like this. And then weather temperature. Oh, no. So what you see here is pretty much just conditionals, whether or not to render the component that we specify here. So if loading is true or loading exists and the permissions value is equal to granted, then we want to render this component right here, which is filling the weather or like loading. And down here, if permissions is equal to granted and the loading state is false or it does not exist anymore, and we actually got the weather from the API, then we want to render this down here. Oh, okay. Now all of this is available from the um, from what is returned by the API of FreeCodeCamp. Okay, what else can I walk you through? All right, the permissions API. So in here, to actually get the permissions from the permissions API, we have to access the navigator and then get the key of permissions. And then this permissions value, we can only have access to the query, I don't know. And then to invoke that, this is a promise. It will accept an object parameter, and that object will have a key of name, and that name is equal to the type of permission name. And if we check it can also give us intelligence actually. So right here, notifications and such. And to have, to finish this as a promise, we need to have the dot then and dot catch method. So that then a callback function to that. We want to get the result and then set the permissions equal to the state of that result. And we also want to append an event listener to that result so that when it changes, we want to run another callback function wherein we will set the permissions once again equal to the state of the result. Now, I don't know what to give this, what type to give this, so I just placed it as any because I'm not that good yet in TypeScript. But yeah, that's pretty much the permissions API. Since you should always ask for permission from your users, to be clear. I think that's it. What else should I show you guys? Alright, I can explain like how this works. So, where is it? Here, temperature. So this works is that whenever we click this button, we are setting the weather temperature to something different. So when that happens, when the state of a component changes, that component will re-render no matter what. If its state changes, that's why most of the time, the state that's passed on is sometimes, let's say, memoized. But yeah, I can't explain that. I cannot explain clearly that the props kind of re-render, but I can explain clearly about that if a state of a component changes, that component will re-render or will rebuild itself in that sense because its state changes, you know? Just like here, if I click the button, its state will change. And since its state changed, everything is rebuilt from scratch. So from here to here specifically, and since the state changed and this was rebuilt, then this function here will recompute the value. So to recompute it, we'll also check the current state of weather temperature or temperature type. Oh, it's equal to Fahrenheit. Then we want to convert this temperature to Fahrenheit. Oh, it's equal to Celsius. Then we just want to return the temperature since the default value returned by the API here is a Celsius temperature. Anyway, what else? Yeah, I think that's it. I can't really think of a way to abstract this some more, but there's definitely a way to do it. But yeah, that's pretty much how you make a simple access to an API, I guess. And take note of how I actually like take the used the dependency array here. So this use effect will run once again if whatever I pass in here changes. In this case, the permission state will change, and if on change it is now equal to granted, then that's when we run this. And then it will be the same for the geolocation, which is almost like a domino effect, which is pretty nice. Okay, so if I refresh, voila. Yeah, I think that's it. That was pretty long, although I just explained my code here. It is still pretty messy, yeah, but you know, it's not bad, I guess. Anyway, this is for like beginner stuff, and I hope you learned something. I'm just going to commit this now. So let's just say, oh, I don't want to commit to the .env. No, sir. Always take note of that. Do not commit your environment variables because most of the time what you put in here are sensitive information. Okay. Refactor code. Commit. Yes. And then sync. Oh, did it sync automatically? I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's it. thank you for watching, and I will post the link to the GitHub repository down below, and also the, what do you call this, the website link, just so you know you can play around with this. Anyway, that's all. Good luck on your development journey, and yeah, thank you for watching. Happy learning.